December 13, 1943. Assam, India. Lone P-40N Warhawk slices through the morning haze, its engine screaming, sunlight glinting off the worn fuselage. Inside, Second Lieutenant Philip Adair, 23, grips the control stick, eyes scanning the horizon. Suddenly, 64 Japanese aircraft appear through the mist to 24 Ki-21 Sally bombers. It's tightly packed, escorted by 40 Nakajima Ki-43 Oscar fighters, slicing toward Dinjan Airfield. Adair's mind races. Below him, the airfield bristles with 14 C-47 transports loaded with critical supplies, a field hospital housing 63 wounded soldiers, and fuel enough to sustain Hump operations for 11 days. The nearest backup fighters, 38 minutes away. Standard procedure, wait for reinforcements when outnumbered. Adair's odds, 64-1. He has two choices: call for help and watch the bombs fall, or attack alone and try to disrupt the raid. His fingers tighten on the throttle. He knows what must be done. Can one P-40 stop 64 enemy aircraft and save the airfield below? The answer will shock you. Second Lieutenant Philip Adair was no rookie. At 23, he had already flown 43 combat missions with the 89th Fighter Squadron, the Burma Banshees, protecting the perilous Hump airlift over the Himalayas. Every flight tested skill, nerves, and sheer willpower, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. His aircraft, P-40N Warhawk Lulu Belle, gleamed in the morning light. Bearing the number 44, armed with 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns and ammunition for roughly 12 seconds of sustained fire, it was a sturdy, reliable fighter, but not a miracle worker. The P-40 was slower than the nimble Japanese Oscars, heavy in turns, but in the hands of a determined pilot, it could still be deadly. Below him lay Dinjan Airfield, a vital hub in Allied supply operations. 14 C-47 transports sat ready, loaded with ammunition, medical supplies, and equipment for Chiang Kai-shek's forces in China. Gay Field Hospital sheltered 63 wounded soldiers. The airfield's fuel stockpile could support operations for 11 days. If the bombers reached their target unopposed, the destruction would cripple the Hump airlift for weeks, potentially altering the course of the war in the China-Burmandia theater. The enemy formation was deadly. 24 Ki-21 Sally bombers, escorted by 40 Ki-43 Oscar fighters, arranged in layered formations above and below the bombers. Intelligence reports confirm that similar raids in Burma achieved 90% hit rates on undefended airfields. Adair had two choices: could wait for reinforcements, risking the airfield's destruction, or he could attack alone, confronting the impossible. Every second mattered. Every decision carried the weight of life and death, not just for him, but for every soldier and plane below. The air shimmered with heat and tension. The odds were impossible. And yet, Adair made his choice. Adair's throttle slammed forward. The Allison V1710 engine roared as the P-40 accelerated to 320 miles per hour, climbing to 4,000 feet above the Japanese formation. From this vantage, the lead Sally bombers were blissfully unaware of the danger descending upon them. Their attention remained fixed on Dinjan Airfield, their target, and not on the lone American fighter above. He rolled, inverted, and dove from the 7 o'clock high position, the wind roaring in his ears. The P-40's guns spat tracers. At 800 yards, he opened fire. Rounds tore through the lead bomber's left wing, fabric tearing, metal sparking, until its engine erupted in flames. Chaos rippled through the formation. Bombers scattered. There. Precise, the fifth formations dissolving in a swirl of smoke and panic, but the danger was far from over. 40 Oscars turned their attention toward him, diving like hawks. The Ki-43 was a master of agility, able to turn tighter than any American fighter. Adair knew the standard tactic: never turn with them, always rely on speed, hit, and run. But escape was not an option. If he fled, the bombers would regroup and complete their attack. The first wave of Oscars attacked in a loose finger four formation. Adair rolled, pulled the nose up, and fired a short burst. Miss. Another pass. Still. Number hits, ammunition dwindling. He had roughly 6 more full bursts across all 6 guns before running dry. Meanwhile, behind the fighter screen, the bombers were trying desperately to reform into their deadly V formation. The clock was ticking. They had perhaps 90 seconds. Before reaching bombing range, he dove again, 8 Oscars, diving in pursuit. The P-40 accelerated past them in a steep dive to 405 miles per hour, outrunning the lighter fighters. At bomber altitude, he leveled and fired again, scoring hits on another lead sally. Its engine exploded, and it plummeted toward the jungle. Core of the formation broke apart further, 3 more bombers struggling to regroup. Adair's plane bore the scars of battle. Fabric ripped, metal buckled. Its right aileron partially severed. Coolant spilling from the engine. Its temperature gauge climbing past 230 degrees Fahrenheit. The engine was on the brink of failure. Yet he pushed forward, flying higher, faster. Desperate to keep the bombers scattered, each maneuver was a calculated risk. A dive here, a roll there, a burst of gunfire, all designed to disrupt the bombing run. Adair forced the Japanese to abandon precision, scattering the raid across miles of jungle. Time and again, the odds screamed for him to retreat, but retreat would mean death for those on the ground. Sweat and carbon monoxide blurred his vision. Muscles burned, hands ached, heart pounding. And yet, for every bomber he downed or scattered, the path to the airfield below became safer. The impossible was in motion, a single P-40 battling 64 enemy aircraft. Each second a knife edge of life or death. And still, Adair climbed, rolled, and dived, refusing to yield, keeping the enemy off balance. The fight was far from over, but the first wave of attacks had shown the power of skill, courage, and sheer determination. Adair's P-40 was no longer just a fighter, was a wounded machine. Smoking, rattling, screaming under the stress of battle. 16 bullet holes marred the fuselage. The right aileron was severed, and coolant sprayed from the damaged engine. The temperature gauge climbed past 250 degrees Fahrenheit, its warning of imminent failure. From above, 8 Ki-43 Oscars circled like vultures, waiting for the moment he would falter. Adair knew that if the engine seized, if the controls failed entirely, he would plummet into the dense jungle below a certain death. Yet, he had no choice. The Sally bombers were 15 miles from Dinjan, still within range. The airfield, the wounded soldiers, the C-47s all depended on him. He pushed the throttle forward, feeling the engine protest with violent vibrations. The oil pressure had dropped to 0, connecting rods grinding against the crankshaft. A flight. Instruments failed. Smoke filled the cockpit, and carbon monoxide made his vision gray at the edges. Each breath burned. Each second was a battle against both the enemy and his own weakening body, with precision born of sheer desperation. Adair executed a maneuver no pilot had ever attempted in combat. He rolled the P-40 inverted, letting the damaged aileron push. The right wing up, countering the nose-down elevator failure. Gravity, aerodynamics, and skill combined to give him temporary control. The plane climbed, inverted, at barely 50 feet per minute clawing altitude from the jaws of death. The Oscars followed, bewildered. One pilot dove close, gesturing for surrender. Adair ignored him, alternating upside-down and right-side-up flight. Each roll calculated to maximize lift and maintain speed. Every motion of the stick was life or death. Every breath a battle against carbon monoxide poisoning below. The Sally bombers struggled to reform, their once perfect V formations now shattered. Adair fired bursts when possible, crippling one bomber after another. Tracers arced through the smoky sky, engines erupted in flames, and the Japanese formations descended into chaos for 11 minutes. Adair defied every law of aerodynamics and logic, fighting both machine and men. His P-40, flames licking the cowling, damaged beyond repair, became an extension of his willpower. It's the impossible odd 64 enemy aircraft against one were being rewritten by courage and ingenuity. By the end of the attack, it's the Japanese bombers were scattered, disorganized, and forced to abort the raid. Dinjan Airfield remained untouched, its transports and wounded safe. But Adair was far from safe himself. The P-40 was a smoking, broken shell, barely responsive, with oil pressure gone, controls failing. And engine heat at critical levels, he had disrupted the raid. He had saved lives. But now he faced another challenge, returning to base in a dying aircraft. Adair's P-40 was barely flying. Smoke poured from the cowling. Instruments failed, and carbon monoxide burned his lungs and dulled his senses. The Allison engine rattled and groaned. Oil pressure long gone, pistons scorched, cylinders scored. The propeller windmilled weakly. Every heartbeat brought him closer to disaster. He knew Naguli Airfield was 21 miles southwest, but with minimal power, damaged controls, and a crippled fuselage, the flight would be a test of nerve as much as skill. The Oscars circled above, watching, perhaps hoping he would fail. But surrender was not an option. Not after what he had achieved over Dinjan. Adair faced a critical problem. The ailerons and elevator were partially disabled. Flying normally was impossible. Sudden thoughts sparked the inverted flight technique. If he rolled the aircraft upside down, the damaged aileron would force the right wing up instead of down, while the nose-down elevator trim could lift the nose. Gravity and aerodynamics could now aid him instead of kill him. At 1,800 feet, he rolled the Warhawk, inverted. Blood rushed to his head. Vision blurred red at the edges. The P-40, burning, wounded, yet alive, responded. He maintained the inverted glide, climbing at 50 feet per minute. Every second counted. Fuel starvation threatened, but alternating upside-down and right-side-up flight allowed the engine to feed just enough to stay alive. Below, a dense jungle rushed upward, disorienting his senses. The manual landing gear pump awaited him. Hydraulic pressure was gone. Without it, a crash landing was inevitable. 28 strokes of the hand pump were required to pressurize the system. With one hand on the control stick, Adair improvised, rigging his lap belt to hold the stick in approximate neutral. He pumped, each stroke a physical struggle. Smoke and exhaustion making his arms burn. Stroke 23 resistance. Stroke 28. Landing gear extended and locked. The P-40 was now draggy, speed reduced, but at least the gear was ready. Naguli was in sight, runway looming ahead, but the path was narrow. The aircraft nearly uncontrollable. Flaps were inoperative. Approach had to be precise. Adair alternated rolls, keeping lift while feeding fuel. Climbing slowly and maintaining glide speed. The Oscars, bewildered, held back. The ground crew at Naguli stared through binoculars at the approaching inverted fighter. Smoke, trailing, gear down, unsure whether it was friend or foe. Every second was life or death. Every motion, a gamble. Adair knew he had saved the airfield, but now the final challenge remained, landing without power in a crippled, burning WARHAWK at 400 feet, half a mile from the Naguli runway. Adair began the final sequence. The inverted approach had bought him precious altitude and control, but now he had to roll upright at the exact moment to align with the runway. It's too early, and the damaged aileron and elevator would push the nose down, risking a crash short. Too late, and he could overshoot the strip entirely. The Warhawk shuddered as he rolled right side up. The damaged aileron immediately forced the right wing down. Adair fought it with every ounce of strength, pulling back on the partially functional elevator. The aircraft descended steeply, nose high, wings wobbling dangerously. Smoke burned his eyes. Carbon monoxide dulled his mind, yet he maintained focus. Below, the ground crew froze. Technical Sergeant Robert Martinez and his team prepared for the worst. They had never seen anything like ITAN inverted P-40, with smoke streaming from the engine, gear extended. Would it explode on impact? Or was this the work of a miracle pilot? The main wheels touched first. 7G impact, slamming the landing gear. The right strut collapsed. The wingtips scraped the runway, sparks flying. The P-40 ground looped 180, skidding backward for 200 feet before coming to a stop. Fire crews rushed forward. Adair sat motionless for a moment, every muscle trembling. Then, carefully, he released his straps, climbed onto the wing, descended with assistance from the ground crew. The assessment was grim. The Allison engine was destroyed, pistons seized, crankshaft warped, oil pan ruptured, coolant everywhere. The aircraft bore 16 bullet holes in the fuselage, 7 in the right wing, 4 in the left, along with severed control cables and damaged hydraulic systems. Lulu Belle would never fly again, yet the mission was a resounding success. Intelligence reports confirmed that all 24 Sally bombers had turned back without dropping bombs. The 40 Oscars escorted them home empty-handed. Dinjan Airfield was intact. All C-47 transports operational, fuel stocks safe, and wounded soldiers unharmed. Adair had single-handedly saved lives and critical supplies, rewriting the odds of the impossible. 3 days later, on December 16th, 10th Air Force Headquarters interviewed Adair. Flight surgeons confirmed elevated carbon monoxide levels. He had flown the last 11 minutes under severe poisoning, a state that should have rendered him unconscious. His skill, courage, and sheer willpower had kept him functional against all odds. On January 8, 1944, Lieutenant General Joseph Stilwell presented Second Lieutenant Philip Adair with the Silver Star, citing his gallantry in action against enemy forces and his remarkable ability to disrupt a 64 aircraft raid while flying a severely damaged fighter. The Burma Banshees celebrated one of their most legendary missions. Adair would go on to fly 95 more combat missions, achieve ace status, and retire as a full colonel in 1971. But on that December morning, one young pilot in a P-40N had proven that courage and ingenuity could defy even the most impossible odds. After the harrowing defense of Dinjan, Adair's reputation spread quickly across the China-Burma-India theater. Fellow pilots whispered about the P-40 that had fought 64 enemy aircraft alone, scattered bombers, and returned to base with a smoking, crippled engine. Yet for Adair, the battle was far from over. Each new mission demanded the same courage, the same precision, the same willingness to defy the odds. Weeks later, in northern Burma, Adair and the 80th Fighter Group, known as the Burma WWII Banshees, were tasked with escorting critical transport aircraft over the Hump. Enemy fighters were a constant threat, and intelligence reported that Japanese pilots had intensified patrols in the area after the Dinjan raid. Every sortie carried life-forward stakes in one particular engagement. Adair spotted a group of P-43 Oscars attempting to intercept a vulnerable formation of C-47s. Memories of Dinjan surged through him, steel entering his veins. He dove from above, using the sun to mask his approach, tracers arcing through the morning haze. His P-40 was slower than the Japanese fighters. Its speed alone would not win this fight. Tactics and audacity would be the key. Adair targeted the lead Oscar, firing short, controlled bursts. The nimble Japanese fighter spiraled out of control, smoke trailing from its engine. The remaining Oscars broke formation, confused by the unexpected attack. He executed hit-and-run passes, keeping the enemy off balance, shielding the transports beneath him. Even damaged or less maneuverable P-40s could survive if flown with intelligence and daring. During another sortie, Adair's P-40 was hit multiple times, fabric torn, metal dented, coolant leaking. Yet the young lieutenant adapted instantly, using steep dives and climbing turns to negate the Japanese advantage in turning radius. One Oscar closed in, but Adair rolled inverted at the last second, forcing the enemy pilot to overshoot. His combination of aggressive tactics and unconventional maneuvers became legendary within the squadron. By mid-1944, Adair had scored 5 confirmed kills, earning ace status. Burma Banshees continued to destroy Japanese aircraft with astonishing effectiveness, yet the memory of Dinjan remained iconic: one pilot, one fighter, against overwhelming odds. Every engagement reaffirmed a simple truth. The skill of the pilot mattered more than the specifications of the aircraft. Even the Japanese pilots recognized the danger. Reports noted that American P-40s, especially flown by determined pilots like Adair, could disrupt formations and scatter bombers with strategic audacity. No amount of technical superiority in aircraft could replace courage, situational awareness, and daring. Adair's actions also had a profound psychological impact. Allied ground forces knew that even when the skies seemed dominated by Japanese fighters, pilots like Adair could turn the tide. Confidence in the Burma Banshees rose, and morale soared among transport crews flying over the hump. They knew that the air cover was not just a shield, but a formidable force capable of extraordinary feats. The climax of Adair's story was not just about surviving impossible odds at Dinjan was the continuation of a legend, a demonstration that, in the chaos of war, courage, innovation, and relentless determination could triumph where machines alone could not. Each mission after Dinjan, each dogfight, each daring maneuver reinforced the tale that one determined pilot could make a decisive difference in the theater of war. The legend of Adair and his P-40 Lulu Belle was far from over. The Burma Banshees continued to fly daily sorties over the Himalayan supply routes, escorting transports and engaging enemy aircraft. Each mission tested not only skill, but nerves, endurance, and the limits of their aircraft. Yet the story of December 13, 1943, lingered in the minds of all who witnessed it. Adair's return flights often began before sunrise. Overhead, the misty peaks of the Himalayas stretched endlessly, treacherous and unforgiving. Below, the Hump airlift convoys moved supplies critical to Chiang Kai-shek's forces in China. Japanese fighters waited, poised to intercept. Each flight could end in death, yet Adair and his squadron pressed on. On one occasion, a formation of 12 P-43 Oscars appeared, attempting to ambush a line of slow-moving transports. Adair, climbing above the sun, identified the lead enemy fighter. With a deep breath, he rolled inverted, using the technique that had saved him at Dinjan. The P-40 responded, smoke and damage forgotten in the focus of combat. He struck the formation from the unexpected angle, scattering the enemy. Other pilots began to imitate Adair's unorthodox maneuvers. In the high-stakes aerial chess of the CBI theater, his ingenuity provided lessons that went beyond technical manuals, flying upside down, alternating power, and leveraging damage controls were no longer just survival tactics, they became tactical tools against superior numbers. The ground crews at airfields like Naguli and Dinjan watched every return flight with a mix of fear and admiration. Technical Sergeant Martinez and others had come to expect the impossible from Adair: smoke trails, torn fabric, and bullet-riddled fuselages were signatures of his presence in the sky, a symbol that one pilot could change the outcome of an entire raid, even when the P-40s were considered obsolete, slower, less maneuverable, incapable of high-altitude combat. Adair showed that audacity, skill, and creativity mattered more than raw specifications. He transformed the perception of the aircraft and became an inspiration to fellow pilots and ground personnel alike. Through these repeated acts, Adair's legend grew. Reports reached headquarters, noting how a single fighter, flown with determination and ingenuity, could disrupt enemy operations and protect critical supply lines. Pilots, engineers, and commanders alike came to realize that in the hands of a hero, even an old P-40 could perform miracles. By late 1944, stories of inverted flights, daring maneuvers, and solo victories over multiple enemy aircraft were part of CBI lore. New recruits were briefed on the Dinjan mission, learning the principles of courage, innovation, and never yielding under impossible odds. Adair was no longer just a pilot. He had become a symbol of hope and tactical brilliance. Yet, despite fame and accolades, Adair remained focused on the mission, protecting the airlift, safeguarding troops, and continuing the fight in the harshest theater of war. Every flight demanded precision, every sortie was a battle, and every enemy engagement was a chance to prove that courage could outweigh numbers. Adair's continued missions over the Himalayan skies had far-reaching consequences. Each sortie preserved the fragile supply lines to China, safeguarded airfields like Dinjan and Naguli, and maintained the momentum of Allied operations in the CBI theater. The mere presence of a determined P-40 pilot could force enemy formations to scatter, disrupting raids and saving lives on the ground. Ground crews and transport pilots came to rely on Adair's skill. His inverted maneuvers, daring dives, and aggressive attacks were no longer anomalies, they became tactical lessons. Younger pilots studied his approach, hit the lead, scatter the formation, and stay unpredictable. Adair had transformed desperation into strategy, proving that initiative and creativity could overcome technological disadvantages. The psychological impact on Japanese pilots was also profound. Reports indicated that many attempted raids over the CBI theater were cancelled or aborted once they detected the presence of American P-40s flown by aggressive pilots. Adair's legend, forged at Dinjan, echoed across enemy intelligence channels, creating a reputation that went beyond raw numbers or mission reports. Meanwhile, the Warhawk itself earned renewed respect, often underestimated for its slower speed and lack of high-altitude capability. It became a tool of innovation in Adair's hands. His success demonstrated that pilots, not planes, decided the outcome of a fight. The Burma Banshee's effectiveness surged, with enemy aircraft destroyed in the air and on the ground. All while minimizing Allied losses beyond immediate victories, Adair's actions had lasting operational consequences. By protecting vital transport aircraft, he ensured the continuous flow of supplies over the Hump, which sustained Chinese forces and contributed to broader Allied strategies in Southeast Asia. A single pilot, by refusing to quit, could influence not just one raid, but the entire theater of war. Adair's courage also inspired recognition from senior commanders. The Silver Star, awarded on January 8, 1944, is a testament not only to his skill and bravery, but also to the strategic value of audacious, higher-risk tactics. It became a symbol of what could be achieved when skill, courage, and determination intersected in the heat of combat. But perhaps the greatest impact was on morale, for the men on the ground crews, and his fellow pilots. Knowing that someone like Adair was in the sky provided confidence in even the most desperate situations. It reinforced a belief that no matter how overwhelming the odds, resourcefulness and determination could tip the scales. Even after the Dinjan raid and countless subsequent missions, Adair's actions served as a reminder. War is as much about courage and innovation as it is about numbers and equipment. His personal legacy became inseparable from that of the Burma Banshees, whose exploits continued until the final months of the war. The Japanese threat, though persistent, had been challenged in ways they had not anticipated. One pilot, in an outdated fighter, had changed the course of multiple engagements, leaving a mark that would endure in CBI history and Allied military lore. The immediate aftermath of December 13, 1943, resonated throughout the China-Burma-India theater. Dinjan Airfield remained intact, the 14 C-47 transports fully operational. Supplies continued flowing over the Hump without interruption. The Japanese raid, once a dire threat, had been neutralized by a single pilot's audacity and skill. At headquarters, intelligence officers and commanders pored over reports of Adair's engagement. Reconstructions of the raid highlighted the extraordinary odds. 1 P-40N against 64 enemy aircraft, yet 0 bombs reached the airfield. Analysts marveled at the effectiveness of Adair's split-second decisions and innovative tactics, noting that his inverted maneuvers and resourceful use of damage controls had redefined survival techniques in aerial combat. The story quickly spread among the Burma Banshees, boosting morale across the squadron. Pilots took inspiration from Adair's actions, adopting more aggressive and unconventional tactics in subsequent missions. Ground crews felt pride in their aircraft, knowing that even the obsolete P-40 could become a legendary weapon in the hands of a skilled pilot. Adair himself faced physical and mental strain in the days following the mission. Carbon monoxide levels in his blood remained dangerously high, and his body bore the cumulative effects of prolonged high-G maneuvers, smoke inhalation, and battle stress. Flight surgeons marveled that he had not only survived, but remained conscious and operational during the most critical moments of the raid. Recognition followed quickly. On January 8, 1944, Lieutenant General Joseph Stilwell awarded Adair the Silver Star, citing his gallantry in engaging a vastly superior enemy formation and protecting critical Allied assets. The citation immortalized the mission in military History emphasizing how skill, determination, courage could outweigh numerical and technological disadvantages. The Dinjan raid became a teaching moment for both Allied and later military historians. Pilots studied Adair's use of inverted flight to stabilize a crippled aircraft, its manual deployment of landing gear, and his calculated risk-taking in engaging multiple enemy formations. So lessons extended beyond the CBI theater, informing tactical doctrine on improvisation and adaptive combat techniques in the wider war context. Adair's actions had strategic consequences. By preserving supplies, wounded soldiers, and transport aircraft, he ensured that the airlift operations to China remained uninterrupted, supporting Allied campaigns across Southeast Asia. The mission underscored how individual heroism could influence broader operational outcomes, shaping both morale and logistics. For Adair, personally, the Dinjan raid cemented his place among the CBI theater's legendary pilots. He continued to fly with the 80th Fighter Group, scoring additional kills, achieving A status, and maintaining the reputation of the Burma Banshees. Lulu Belle, though destroyed, became a symbol of resilience, representing the ingenuity and courage required to triumph against impossible odds. Years later, historians would recount the story as one of the most extraordinary single-pilot engagements of World War II. The mission exemplified how tactical brilliance, unwavering determination, and courage under fire could protect lives, influence operations, and leave a legacy that inspired generations of pilots. The fallout of that December morning extended far beyond the immediate battlefield. It transformed the perception of the P-40 Warhawk, elevated Adair to the status of a war hero, and ensured that the story of one man against overwhelming odds would never be forgotten. December 13, 1943, remained etched in the history of the China-Burma-India theater as a testament to courage, skill, and determination. Second Lieutenant Philip Adair, flying his P-40N Lulu Belle, faced 64 Japanese aircraft alone and emerged victorious not through technology, but through ingenuity, audacity, and sheer willpower. Adair's daring inverted maneuvers, precise attacks on lead bombers, and innovative handling of a crippled aircraft ensured Dinjan Airfield remained intact. 14 C-47 transports stayed operational, and critical supplies continued reaching Allied forces in China. His actions saved lives, protected wounded soldiers, and preserved the momentum of the Hump airlift. Awarded the Silver Star and celebrated by fellow pilots, Adair became a symbol of what one determined individual could achieve against impossible odds. Lulu Belle, destroyed but legendary, represented the indomitable spirit of the Burma Banshees and the power of courage over circumstance. The story of Adair and his P-40 teaches a timeless lesson: in war, as in life, numbers and machines alone do not decide the outcome, creativity and determination do. Decades later, his name endures in the annals of military history, inspiring pilots, soldiers, civilians alike to face challenges head-on, no matter how insurmountable they may seem.